السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على محمد ومن تبعهم بإحسان الدين. In this short video, we're going to be given a general introduction to the science of Nahu and how to go about studying it a bit and different issues that it deals with and its founder and a bit about its history and so on and so forth. But before that, we need to understand why is it important for us to have a general introduction to a science before studying it? Why is it important for us to understand a framework or the framework of a knowledge before studying it? I think this idea is very much highlighted in Ibn Qayyim's statement that can be applied to many other things, which is الجهل بالطريق وآفات والمقصود يجيب بالطعم كثير مع فائدة قليلة. He says that you not knowing the path that leads you to your goal, and you not knowing the obstacles in that path, and you not knowing even, the goal behind that path, will make you tire yourself out with very little benefit. Will make you tire yourself out with very little benefit. You not knowing the path that leads to your goal, how to memorize the Quran, and the different obstacles that will lead you to that goal of memorizing the Quran will most of the time leave you having spent years trying to memorize the Quran without actually reaching that goal. Okay, this is how this statement can be applied to many different aspects of life, to students of knowledge, studying and seeking knowledge, to many different things, And from those things is seeking a specific knowledge. So you're not knowing the path that leads you to understanding that knowledge and what exactly that knowledge is dealing with. Well, a lot of times make the person spend many years studying a specific science without actually understanding what he's studying or what she's studying and how to reach that goal of understanding that science. Now, a statement that is even clearer in the point that I'm trying to drive is what Waradi, who was a great Shafi'i scholar, mentioned in his book أدب الدنيا والدين. He says اعلم أن لنا علوم أوائل تؤدي إلى أواخرها ومداخل تودي إلى حقائقها فليبدأ طالب عن بأوائلها لينتهي إلى أواخرها وبمداخلها ليفضي إلى حقائقها ولا يطلب الآخر قبل الأول ولا الحقيقة قبل المدخل فلا يدرك الآخر ولا يعرف الحقيقة لأن البناء على غير أس لا ينبني والثمر على غير غارس لا يجني. نختار عليه. He mentions here that know pretty much that sciences have an introduction, have a beginning before the ending. Okay, so the student of knowledge needs to start with the beginning of that science before trying to reach the end of that science. And that you shouldn't start with the end of that science. So you shouldn't start with level 5 before starting with level 1. Because if he does that, then it's like someone who's trying to build a building without any foundation. It won't build. Or it's like someone trying to, gather and trying to harvest fruits that aren't growing on a firm trunk. Sort of what he's trying to say here. So again, the importance of you understanding the framework of a knowledge, you understanding where to start so that you can reach the end. But if you just start randomly, you won't actually understand what you're studying, and you won't necessarily understand how to reach the end because you'll be starting from the middle or you'll be starting from the back, and you won't actually understand where you are in that science. So with that being said, with us understanding, inshallah, from these two great scholars, the importance of understanding and have an introduction to things before studying it, before treading it, before trying to reach that goal, let's go ahead and talk about the 10 things that we need to understand before studying any science. This is what Muhammad ibn Ali as-Sabban he mentions, who was a great Egyptian scholar, and these lines of poetry are very, very popular or very famous. That he says, إن بيان كل العلم عشرة الحد والموضوع ثم ثمرة ونسبته فضله واضع واسم الاستاذ حكم الشارع مسائل وبعض اكتفى من درى جميع هذا شرفا. So he mentions that the introduction or the beginning of any science is 10. So any science you're going to study, you should try to understand these 10 things before studying it. The first thing is the definition of it. What's the definition of this science? What does it deal with? The second thing is what it deals with the topic itself. The third thing is the fruit, okay, the benefits of that science. The next thing is its correlation to the other science. So its correlation to the other sciences of the Arabic language. After that, فضله, the greatness of this science. After that, the foundation of the one who founded the science and wada. Then after that, with the name of the science or the names. Sometimes you'll have one science that has multiple names. Then after that, al-istimdad, pretty much the source. The science, it comes from which source? Then after that, hukm al-shari', the ruling, the Islamic ruling on studying that science. Is it obligatory? Is it mustahab? Is it fardhu kifaya or fardhu al-ayn, so on and so forth. Masail, and after that, the different issues and different topics that the science is dealing with, yani. So if you understand all these 10, the Shaykh says, has a sharafa, you'll have, really an honored position and have really understood that science in a sense. So this is what, inshallah, in this video, we're going to be covering. So we're going to be covering the definition, the topic, the fruits of the science, its correlation to other sciences, the greatness of it, the founder, its names or names, and its istimdad. We're going to be covering the source of it, hukm al-shara, the Islamic ruling on it, and also masail. We're going to be covering in a very, very brief sense the different issues that it deals with. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the definition. What's the definition of al-nahu? Al-had, the definition. Al-nahu has a general and a specific meaning depending on the context. As Adam Ethiopi mentions, and he explains in the beginning to Rashad of Alfiyat Malik, al-nahu, okay, the science of al-nahu has a general and has a specific sense to it. The general sense is what we may call grammar, which is علم بأصول المستنبطة من كلام العربي تعرف بها أحوال الكلمات العربية حال إفرادها وتركيبها. We're going to pretty much explain that in more details, but the general sense, the general meaning of a nahu is that it compromises both what we call grammar, or what we call, nahu, and what we call sarf, morphology. So in a general sense, a nahu, grammar, is a science based on principles that are derived from the speech of the Arabs that will allow you to know the state of an Arabic word while it's in a sentence and while it's not in a sentence. Okay, we're going to explain this definition in more details. Then the specific sense, the specific definition of النحو is علم بأصول المستنبطة من كلام العرب تعرف بها أحوال أواخر الكلمات العربية. Now, in a specific sense, grammar is a science that teaches you principles that are derived from the speech of the Arabs that will allow you to know the ending of a word. So in a specific sense is what we call syntax, and nahu is really only dealing with the ending of the word. Now, the word nahu, when it's used, usually it's used to mean a specific sense. So usually it's used to mean a specific sense, but it's important to understand that sometimes the word nahu will be used to deal with, or will be used in its more general sense. So in the general sense, the word nahu compromises both syntax and morphology, while in the specific sense, it only compromises syntax. Now, to understand this in more details, the general definition, we said here, a science that is based on principles derived from the speech of the Arabs that enable you to know the state of an Arabic word or Arabic words when they're alone and in a sentence. So when they're alone, that's sarf, morphology. So the word Muhammad, on what pattern is it? On the pattern of mufa'al. The word khaliq is on what pattern? The pattern of fa'al, is the ism fa'al, right? While Muhammad is ism maf'ul. So you're looking at the word while it's alone, while it's not in a sentence. Now, when I add the word Muhammad to a sentence, and I say ذهب محمد, now that is when nahu syntax comes in, because ذهب Muhammad, ذهب has a specific grammatical position, is the fa'al, and Muhammad is the fa'al, and it has another specific, grammatical position. So grammar, in a general sense, compromises both morphology and syntax, but in the specific sense, which is usually how it's normally used, it means a science that deals and enables you to know the ending of an Arabic word. So a science that is based on principles derived from the speech of the Arabs that enable you to know the ending of an Arabic word. Is it going to have a dhamma at the end, a kasra at the end, a fatha at the end? What's going to be its ending? So in other words, enables you to know the state of a word when it's in a sentence where it has a grammatical position which is designated by its ending. So for example, when I say Muhammadun Kabirun, Muhammad, the ending of the word Muhammad, which is a dhamma, Muhammadun, lets me know that Muhammad here is the subject, it's a mubtada, and it's what we call marfu'. While Kabirun is coming after the mubtada, it also ends with a dhamma, and it's coming to inform and give information about the mubtada, so it's the khabar, it's the predicate. Okay, so this is not to make things too complex, but the main thing I want you to remember is that grammar has a more general sense to it and a more specific sense to it. The more specific sense is usually how the word nahu is used, which is that it's a science that is based on principles derived from the speech of the Arabs that enable you to know the ending of an Arabic word while it's in a sentence, if you will. So that is the definition of nahu that is usually used, especially nowadays, in the science of nahu. Now that we understood the definition of nahu, let's go on to al-mawdu', the topic, the realm that it deals with. So obviously nahu, grammar, the realm, the topic that it deals with is the Arabic language. That's very clear. It's one of the 6 sciences of the Arabic language. That's not complicated at all. The fruit, what's the benefit of studying Nahu? What is the benefit of studying Nahu? Well, there are mainly 2 different benefits. The first one is protecting your tongue from mistakes, what's called lahan, grammatical mistakes. Okay, so you're making grammatical mistakes while you're speaking, while you're writing. And the second benefit was protecting yourself from misunderstanding. Protecting yourself from misunderstanding the Quran, which can happen if you don't understand grammar, and also making mistakes when you're reading the Quran, and also protecting yourself from misunderstanding ahadith when you're reading them. Because at the end of the day, the thing that determines the meaning of a sentence is its grammar. So if you misunderstand its grammar, you misunderstand the sentence meaning. So that's the 2 main fruits, if you will, of studying grammar. That's going to help you in, being fluent and being eloquent in your speech in Arabic. And likewise, it's going to protect you from misunderstanding when you're reading the Quran, when you're reading Arabic books, and also when you're listening to the speech of scholars. Nisbatu is correlation with other sciences of the Arabic language. As we covered, it's one of the 6 sciences of the Arabic language. It's one of the 6 sciences of the Arabic language, which we covered in another video. And then fadluhu, the greatness of it. What's the greatness of the Arabic language, or an-nahu more specifically? I think this line of poetry really highlights it. The poet said that an-nahu, the science of nahu, is like salt. The science of nahu, the science of grammar, is like salt. If you add it to any food, it makes it better. If you add it to any food, it makes it better. Now, this is a statement that you'll find a lot of people mention, that النحو مثل الملح, that grammar is like salt. And there are many different ways that we can understand this statement. First and foremost, we can understand in the sense that salt was used, especially back in those days, to preserve meat. So Nahu, grammar, is the thing that's going to preserve your understanding of the other sciences of Islam. It's going to preserve your understanding of them, just like salt preserves and conserves meat from rotting. Likewise, salt, when it's added to food in a moderate form, it makes it better. Right? You're eating an egg or something like that, usually you're going to add some salt to make it taste better. Chips and all those things. Now, that being said, if you add too much salt to a food, it's going to corrupt it. So it has to be just the right amount. So someone shouldn't study Nahu in a general sense too much. It's not a science that someone should spend his entire life studying, but should also make sure that he's studying the other sciences that are more important, like aqidah and tafsir and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, Nahu, it doesn't matter also in which food you add it in, right? So Nahu, if you study it, is going to benefit you in all the other sciences of Islam, just like salt is used to add flavor to many different dishes. So if you study Nahu, it's going to help you when you're studying any single science of Islam, whether it be ahadith, whether it be tafsir, whether it be aqidah, whatever the science may be. Why? Because all those sciences that you're studying are explained and are written in the Arabic language. So you're never going to understand it till you understand the grammar that dictates the meaning of those Arabic words and those Arabic sentences that those sciences are written in, whether it be in hadith or nahw or so on and so forth. So this statement, النحو مثل ملح إن لقيته في كل إنسان في مطعم يحصني, has a lot of different meanings, more specifically that Nahu is like salt. So that's its greatness in a very brief sense. And Wada, who's the founder of the Arabic language? Or sorry, the founder of the science of grammar. So the science of grammar was always an applied science used by the Arabs in their speech. So if you look at the Arabs before the time of Islam and during the early times of Islam, so Abu Bakr and Sahaba and so on and so forth, they used to speak Arab. They used to speak the Arabic language. But when they used to speak the Arabic language, it was a very natural way. They didn't necessarily have to write down and understand the sciences of grammar. They didn't have to understand that this is the subject, this is the predicate, this is the kada, this is the kada. Why? Because it was natural to them. This was their language. They just knew how it was supposed to sound like. So it was an applied science. It wasn't a science that was actually, written down and studied during the time of the Arabs. It was just learned in an applied fashion. This is how we speak. This is how you're going to sound like. So as the Arab said, the Arab, the Bedouin, he said, I'm not a grammarian who needs to chew his words. Rather, I'm salaqiyun. Salaqiyun means pretty much the Arabic language is part of my blood. I speak and it's eloquent. And it's a natural thing to me. I don't need to actually be a grammarian who actually think about, well, I'm going to make this word marfu and this word mansub and this word majrurun because no, it's natural to me. I don't need to think about it. So the point here is that the science of grammar was always an applied science. But when did it become an actual science that was studied in terms of a theory? And that could be actually taught to a non-Arab that entered into Islam. So this happened during the time of the Tabi'in. It was codified as a theory science by a Tabi'i called Abu Aswad al-Du'ali. Now, what was the reason that Abu Aswad al-Du'ali started to codify the Arabic grammar and the Arabic language to a certain extent as a theory and as a science and write it down and write down the rules and derive the rules from the speech of the Arabs and so on and so forth? When and how did this happen? Imam Suyuti, he wrote a book called Al-Akhbar al-Marwiyya fi Sabil Wada Arabiyya. He wrote a whole book on this topic. What is the different narrations that have been narrated concerning the reason behind founding the Arabic language? So the different narrations that have been narrated concerning the reason behind codifying the Arabic language, more specifically grammar. So Imam Suyuti mentions more than 5 different reasons behind the exact reason why the science began being codified by Abu Aswad al-Du'ali. Okay, so the narrations are not all the same; they're slightly different. But what's very clear is that the one who founded the science of grammar is no doubt Abu Aswad al-Du'ali. As far as the reason behind it, there's very different narrations and very different reasons that are brought forth. And we're going to cover one of them. So this is the founder, Abu Aswad al-Du'ali, was a tabi'i. Now, the name. What's the name of the science? Well, the name of the science is Nahu. The name of the science is Nahu. Another name for it that was used back in the days was Ilm al-Qawa'id. Ilm al-Qawa'id, the science of the principles, because Nahu is all about just learning rules and principles. But anyhow, one of the names and the name that is used primarily now is Nahu. Now, why is it called Nahu? Why is grammar called Nahu? Because Nahu can mean direction, right? Imshi nahwa zawiya. I can say to someone, walk in the direction of the zawiya, in the direction of the corner. So Nahu, why is it called Nahu? Well, this is where we have a narration that seems to indicate the reason why. This is one of the many narrations that Imam Suyuti mentions. One of them is that دخل أبو أسود الدؤلي على علي بن أبي طالب وكان يأكل رقعة فقال له. إذا أبو أسود الدؤلي رحمة الله عليه, he entered upon Ali ibn Abi Talib رضي عنه. Abu Aswad al-Du'ali, he lived during the reign of Ali ibn Abi Talib رضي عنه. So he entered upon him, and Ali رضي عنه was reciting or was reading a piece of paper pretty much. So Abu Aswad, he said to him, ما هذه? What are you reading pretty much? قال علي رضي عنه, he said, إني تميت كلام عرف وجدته قد فسد من خلطة هذه الحمراء يعني الأعاجم فأردت أن أصنع شيء يرجعون إليه ويعتمدون عليه. Ali says that I looked at the speech of the Arabs and I discovered, if you will, that because we've been mixing with non-Arabs, because we've been mixing with, Persians and Romans that have entered into Islam, that become Muslim, and now they're living with us, because of this mixture, the Arabic language is starting to become corrupted. People are starting to make lahan. People are starting to make grammatical mistakes that we didn't used to make when we were, not mixing with other tribes and other nations. So he says, فَأَرَدْتُ أَنْ أَصْنَعَ شَيْءًا يَرْجِعُونَ إِلَيْهِ وَيَعْتَمِدُونَ عَلَيْهِ. So Ali anhu, he said that I wanted to, write something that would explain the rules of the Arabic language so that people that enter into Islam would be able to go back to them and understand how the Arabic language is supposed to be spoken and how it's spoken during, the time of the Prophet ﷺ and during the time before Islam. So how the Arabs, before they started mixing with these non-Arabs, how they used to speak, how the Arabic language was spoken in a pure fashion. So pretty much he started writing down a general introduction to grammar. So then ثم قال أبي أسود. So then what did Ali do? Ali, he told to Abu Aswad al-Du'ali, أنحو هذا النحو. Pretty much Ali, he gave him the piece of paper that he had just written, explaining the rules. He gave them to Abu Aswad al-Du'ali, and he said, do something like this. Unhu means that he do something, هذا النحو, like this example here that I'm giving you. Because as we know, the word nahu can sometimes mean nahu. It can sometimes mean an example, right? فالفعل نحو دخل. a verb is like dakhala and daraba and stuff like that. So unhu hada nahu pretty much means that Ali, he gave the piece of paper that was a general introduction, maybe had a few words on it about grammar. He gave it to Abu Aswad Duani, and he pretty much was commanding him to start writing something like this. So this is one of the reasons that scholars mentioned that Nahu is called Nahu. And there's other reasons that certain scholars mentioned, like Ibn Faris and Maqis al-Lugha and other scholars, but this is one famous narration. Okay, so that is the name of it. Now, al-istimdad, the source. What is the source of the Arabic language, or what is the source of Arabic grammar? So the rules of Arabic grammar is derived from the speech of the Arabs in cities before 150 after Hijrah and in desert before 400 after Hijrah. So what does this mean? So the rules of the grammar are derived from pretty much four sources: the Quran, the Sunnah, but scholars, they differ on whether the Sunnah is a source or not. I've put it down here because the muhaqqiqun, the later scholars like Ibn Malik and also Ibn Hisham, they mention that the Sunnah is a proof for Arabic grammar, but this is not a topic I'm going to explain right now. So the Quran, the Sunnah, so a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, al-shi'ru, Arabic poetry, and an-nathru, Arabic speech in general. These are the four sources, with one of them being contested, which is the Sunnah, that we take the Arabic rules or the rules of the Arabic language from. So we look at these four different sources, and from these four different sources, we derive rules of grammar. We derive rules of grammar, or the Arabs, or the scholars, I should say, they did that in at the beginning of the Tabi'un and so on and so forth. So that being said, when it comes to ash'ar, poetry, and the speech of Arabs in general, this is only taking in cities before 150 after Hijrah. So after 150 after 150 after Hijrah, the scholars of the Arabic language, they stopped using the speech of the Arabs that lived in cities. Why? Because after this period, or around this period, I should say, the Arabs that lived in cities, they started mixing with non-Arabs so much that their speech started changing. So the Arab that they were the Arabic that they were speaking was not the Arabic that was spoken by the Prophet ﷺ and by, even the pre-Islamic Arabs. It started changing at this time. So because of that, they stopped taking it as a proof in cities by 150 after Hijrah, around that time. Now, when it comes to the desert, so the Arabs that used to live in the desert, the scholars of Islam, they kept on taking their speech as a proof, both their poetry and their speech, till around 400 after Hijrah. But after 400 after Hijrah, even their speech became and started becoming, mixed with other languages, and it started changing. So we couldn't use it anymore as a proof for how the Arabs used to speak. So if you look at the scholars of the Arabic language, more specifically the scholars of grammar, they're always going to use as their proof the Quran, sometimes the Sunnah, although it's contested, and poetry and Arabic speech that usually is pre-Islamic, because that's the speech that was the most pure and that wasn't mixed at all with other nations because it didn't come to the Arabic Peninsula. And sometimes they'll use a speech of Arabs that came after Islam, or that were Muslim pretty much, but obviously without going too far in the years. Because obviously the further we go in the years, the more the Arabs, they started mixing, whether it be in cities or in the desert, as you can see, with non-Arabs, and their speech started changing. So these are the four sources of Arabic grammar. Hukm al-Shari', what's the Islamic ruling on learning Nahu? It's Fardun Kifaya. It's a communal obligation. So if some people in the community learn it, then other people don't need to learn it. So it's not obligatory on every single Muslim to learn grammar, but it's obligatory that in the nation, in the Ummah, we have certain people to understand grammar, because that is how we understand the Quran and Sunnah. Besides the issues that it deals with, the different issues that it deals with. Now, in a very, very brief sense, this is a very, very brief sense because we can go into more details. Nahu deals with al-kalam. It deals with Arabic speech. Nahu deals with al-kalam. It deals with Arabic speech. And Arabic speech is made up of three things. It's made up of the verb, al-fi'lu, like kataba, he wrote. It's made up of the harf, the particle, like fi and la and na'am and other particles. And it's made up of the ism, of the noun, like Muhammad and Mudallis and so on and so forth. When you put these three things together, or at least two of them together, you're going to get a jumla, you're going to get a sentence. And sentences in the Arabic language can either be fi'aliyah, verbal sentences, so made up of a verb, that start with a verb, or they can be ismiya, nominal sentence that start with an ism, that start with a noun. Now, a جملة فعلية, a verbal sentence, is always made up of a فعل, a verb, and a فاعل, a doer of the verb. And a جملة اسمية, a nominal sentence, is always made up of a مبتدأ, a subject, and a خبر, a predicate. Now, so Nahu deals with this. Deals with the ism and its different grammatical positions. Is different declension. There's declension system and the harf and the fi'al, and then it deals with when these words come together in a sentence. What are the different positions that it takes, whether it be in a jumlatun ismiya or a jumlatun fi'aliyya, and what are the things that we add to a nominal sentence or to a verbal sentence to add extra meaning, and what are the endings that those words are going to have. So this again is a very, very brief introduction to the different issues that Nahu deals with. And I have a video that is called A General Overview of Arabic Grammar that goes into more details on the different issues, although that video should be only studied by someone who's already studied grammar before. So with this, we've studied, or we've covered, the different general things that someone should know about Nahu before studying it. And Hadu, the definition, and Mawdu, the topic that it deals with, Al-Thamana, the fruit of it, and Nisba, its correlation to other sciences, Fadluhu, the greenness of it, Al-Wadi', its foundation, or its founder, sorry, Al-Ismu, the name of it, and Istimdad, the sources of it, Hukm al-Shari', the Islamic ruling on studying it, and finally, Masail, in a very general sense, the different issues that it deals with. I hope this video was clear. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك